welcome back to another episode of Rugby with Pads. You've had your fill of draft content. I know. I really do know. I've done a whole week's worth, and before that, I did all the tiers over the previous weeks. There's a lot been going on around drafts, and for me, I've completed my draft season. I've done. I don't know how many drafts it is, but I had 3 on one night, which pretty much finished my year of drafting. I've got one more on the 31st, but I think I'm gonna keep it at that. So it's a lot of leagues gone for me, and I've learned some things over the past, and I've formed some opinions over some players that I like and I don't like. And this is not going to be an episode where I talk about really sexy players. We're not going to talk about the Christian McCaffreys, the Justin Jeffersons. We're not going to talk about those guys. We're going to talk about the fringe guys who should be on your radar. And I think this is my early season sleeper show. These are the guys who, well, for those of you who don't know, sleepers are guys who should break out at some point or another and overall improve upon the results of their ADP. If their ADP is 12th round and they're potentially going as the QB4 in a 12-man session, sorry, a QB4 in a 12-man, they end up being a QB3 or QB2. That, for me, defines a sleeper. And the sleeper hits are the kind of guys who have the tendency in any given week or over the season improve upon their ADP considerably. And I've taken a look at some players, and I think there is some real value there. And you may have already decided upon your players that you're going to draft, etc. But sometimes things happen, and sometimes you have to pivot. And that's what I want to talk about today. When you're in a position where you have to pivot and maybe take a guy later on, how can you make the best choice of that decision later on? A lot of times in the 7th to 12th, 15th round, you're not making picks based on value. You're making picks to fill out your roster. What I'm saying is potentially take a look at some of these guys, and we have probably about 15 guys. Oh, crikey. I got really excited about some players, and we'll go position by position about players who I think you should be interested in, and we'll go over some of their stats, and we'll have some of their stats on the board here. We'll take a look at them, and we'll see how we feel about them. And generally, hopefully, this will give you a bit of advice on who to pick up later on in your draft, or potentially off the waiver wire, because a lot of these guys, I think, will find their way on the waiver wire at some point or another for various reasons. And we are going to start with a guy who, to anyone who knows me, is pretty obvious, and it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. He currently has an ADP of 103. It's in the middle of the 8th and 9th round. He's behind Tua, Deshaun Watson, who had an awful season, and Dak, who was the interception leader last year over 12 games or something silly. I think people are fading him because his first 5 weeks are awful. They're really bad. He has got the Patriots. He's got the Bills coming off for the first game. It's a hard work. I think Patriots is probably the easiest in week 3. You were trading on a down year from last year. But he was still a fringe QB1 last year. Looking at stats, I think he was 13th. But only 3 times since 2009 has he finished outside of the top 10, and most of that time is due to injury. So his since 2009, he's finished like at the QB1, the QB2, the QB2, QB24 on a down year, injuries, QB7, QB1, QB29, QB7, QB9, QB6, QB6, QB13 last year on a rubbish year, and now people are wanting to dump on him. He's been the QB 3 times, QB1 3 times, and 4 times he's been the QB4 or better, effectively. He's always averages out to be a QB4. So why are people drafting him 13th, 14th, 15th? I really don't know. I think based on that hard schedule, he might become available if people have drafted him by week 3 because of schedule and frustrations. But I think if you were to stick with him, you could get a really good. Yeah, he could have a really good run towards the end of the season. He's before last year, he had 2 years back to back where he was the league MVP. His talent is completely undoubted. I think he's going to get a small boost in popularity from Hard Knocks, but he's still not being drafted any higher than a QB2, which is crazy. He doesn't throw interceptions either. I think that's something to be really considered. He's not flashy, but he will not kill your team. And when you're drafting late, you want someone who's not going to kill your team when you're comparing him against other people down at that spot. And come on, did you see Hard Knocks? That boy can throw. He is going to be a good leader, and I think he's going to be good on a good team this year. Next, we're going to look at another semi-unsexy name, but maybe a bit more interesting than Aaron Rodgers was for some people. Looking at Gino. Compared to Aaron Rodgers, 103, he's being drafted at the 114, which is mid to late ninth. I think people are missing out on his schedule for the exact reverse opposite of Aaron Rodgers. His first 4 weeks are absolute fire, and then maybe you could switch to Rodgers. I think these guys could be potentially really interesting to go back to back. I think it's very likely that in the first few weeks he could outscore Mahomes and co just because of the consistency he has in his weapons, and they've just added more people to his arsenal. He's got Zach Charbonnet, who is a better pass catcher than Ken Walker. They've added Jackson Smith and Jigba in the with the 11th pick. It's crazy. They've got some really, really good guys. Last year he was a QB5. It was a small sample size, but they've added a lot more weapons on offense, as I've mentioned. He's very efficient. He doesn't get injured a lot, and you get him at a QB2 value. You get QB5 upside, a QB15 value. It's crazy. I think maybe he could be shaded a bit further on, but you could probably trade him away at that point because he's got a poor run towards the end. He's got the Jets in the championship week, but he plays the Rams and the Cardinals 4 times a week, and that's a slam dunk. And as a Rams fan, they're going to suck this year. They're going to have a terrible defense, and he's going to play really well against them. So pick up Gino while you still can. Now we're going to talk about someone who is very, very unpopular. Ryan Tannehill. Yeah. ADP 183. He's a QB 29 or 30. He's largely undrafted. He had a really bad year last year. He only played 12 games, but when he does play a good full year, and he has a full complement, he becomes a QB8, the QB12, and he's going undrafted. This is a guy who's got QB1 upside, and he's going undrafted. And he even flashed earlier in his career in Miami with a QB8 performance. And that's whilst they run the ball a huge amount. You're not getting consistency, but I think he's big guy, isn't he? Yeah, he's almost as big as Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz had a bit of running upside. He's 6'4", 220. He'll put his body on the line. You're not drafting him as a one, but on a week by week, he has upside, and he's probably your guy that you're potentially targeting in your bye week. And maybe that's all he's going to be useful for. He's got upside in some rushing and scrambling. He's more accurate than you'd think, and he has DeAndre Hopkins, who is going to be a target reception monster. He is fighting for a spot against Banana Man, Will Levis, and Malik Willis, who I don't think really flashed last year at all. I think that could count for something, though, because I think he's going to be trying to show his dominance in that position. Right, so 3 QBs there to consider. And I think the take-home message here is everyone wants an elite guy who's in the top 10. And they're all youngsters. You've got the likes of some of the obvious guys like Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, young, Justin Herbert, young. Then you've got potentially even Dak breaking into that as well. Lamar Jackson with his rushing upside. I think we're dismissing the experience, which is vital at the most valuable position in football. There's a reason we're not drafting Bryce Young, who was drafted 1 overall in the actual NFL draft, anywhere in your redraft leagues. And by the way, all these ADPs are stuck to a 12-man league. So you've got Rodgers in the 8th, Gino in the 9th, and Tannehill undrafted. I think all 3 of them could have really, really interesting and nice seasons for you as a sleeper. Right. Running backs. Running backs are in the news a lot at the moment because they're an incredibly devalued position. I mean, who's going to stick up their head with a value from a late round 0 RB draft position? But all of these guys could be usable RB1, RB2s if you want to go down a 0 RB route. And I think I've proven this year that it is possible. But who are you going to pick? And we're going to start off with, oh, goodness, I hate to say this because he's burnt me so many times. Antonio Gibson. He's not an RB1. We know that. His ADP is 87, 7th, 8th round. He's around the same position as Brian Robinson, James Cook, and Jamal Williams. He's coming in at QB 34. I think someone's missing something here. The Commanders, I think, are going to be sneaky good. They're poised for interesting stuff. He is a pass catcher. He was a receiver in college, so he knows that. And there is no J.D. McKissick there to be the 3rd down guy. He is a 3rd down guy, and everything out of camp is saying he is catching everything. I think they'll be behind a lot, because I don't think their defense is cracked up too much, but they'll be throwing a lot, which means he'll see the field more. He is very much the passing down back. And when he is freed up from other competition, he is only one injury away from being the overall bell cow back effectively. He's been the RB12 and the RB11. Now, with less competition and more opportunity, he should improve on his RB35 performance last year, and he's being drafted as an RB3. He's got a route to run up a lot higher as well. Yeah, I think he's someone that you should stash. Someone with a bit more consistency, though, if you're into that, is AJ Dillon. And AJ Dillon has never burned you. ADP 85, 7th round, so similar position. He's the RB32 currently. He is playing second fiddle, and he's never really been an RB3. But sorry, mistakenly said there. He's never been an RB3. He even sharing role and at a lesser rate, he's been the RB21 and the RB26. New scheme, could be run heavier. He's a big bruiser behind Aaron Jones. He's the change-up back potentially. Aaron Jones will be the one, but he's got the best number 2 behind him, and it's looking likely that he could be rocketed up if there's an injury, and he's had spike weeks. I think there's also something to be said about following the money. Aaron Jones took a pay cut. AJ Dillon did not. AJ Dillon's obviously still on his rookie contract, I believe. I don't know where he was picked up originally, maybe a 3rd round guy, but he has something to play, and there is something to be said about those off-season and post-season, pre-season, etc. quad shots that everyone loves to see. Quadzilla. Yeah, I think he could be a very interesting play. I don't think he's going to flash hugely, but I think he's going to be a safe floor, especially if you're going 0 RB. He is going to be a usable RB2 there. Zach Charbonnet. Now, during the rookie draft, Zach Charbonnet shocked everyone by going to the Seahawks and killing Ken Walker's draft capital. He is currently being drafted at the 102. Sorry, that's 102, not as the second pick. Mid to late 8th or 9th round, he's the RB36. So we're talking about guys who are in that RB3 range. My thought is that why would Pete Carroll draft another running back if he's got his guy? Kent Walker has been known to have injuries. Charbonnet's college tape shows he's bigger and he's a better receiving back than Ken Walker. He could be the rookie to really break out and have a volume play for himself if Ken Walker gets any regression. I think Ken Walker is still that home run guy. He's maybe the replacement for Rashad Penny in that system potentially, and that's how they're looking at here. And maybe Zach Charbonnet is the new Chris Carson. The archetypes for their size certainly fit that idea, but I think he's more likely to be a goal down back. And yeah, as an RB3, if picking that, upside is touchdowns. It's really useful. I mean, last year Jamal Williams carved out himself a role purely based on that fact, and maybe he could be the guy this year. He's a big guy, big guy, big bruiser. Go look at his tape; it's fun to watch, and feel confident if you're picking him up in late rounds. Someone who I was surprised to pick up so much of, and I think just before my draft started, I really convinced myself this was a good idea. Funnily enough, this is a guy who in Dynasty I tried to pick up for a first a couple of years ago. I probably put off more than that, but it's Javonte Williams, and we haven't seen anything of him. Currently, his ADP is around 60, RB25, 5th, 6th round kind of guy. He has all the tools in his locker to be great, and he has looked really good in preseason. I think he is the one player that you probably should buy the injury dip on. Now, I don't really. I think this is because I don't really believe that Samaje Perine is a number 1 in that system. I really don't. He has got a smaller sample size on his own, but when he is given snaps and when he wasn't competing against Melvin Gordon, he can show he can really cook. And cook when Russ can't anyway. He got 30 points against Casey as a rookie, and he's still the same player. Yes, he's been injured, but these days, modern medicine, I think the ACL, MCL stuff is not nearly as a big concern. Maybe re-injury risk there is high, but when you're picking in the 5th, 6th round, you're getting potential RB1 upside. Yeah, maybe with an injury question, but I think he could be an RB1 this year. I don't really trust their passing game in Denver. I think Sean Payton is going to play around with the limitations that maybe he sees in Russ, and they definitely see in their receiving core, especially having lost Tim Patrick recently and not replaced him. They may even be shipping someone away. We don't know. They're going to be relying heavily on their defense, and then picking him off with some big passing plays in an old school Russ way. But it's going to be run heavy. I think it's going to really play potentially in old Seahawks fashion, which is why I quite like Cortland Sutton. But that's for another time as well, because I think he could have that big playability there, similar to how Lockett did and does in Seattle. Sorry, Seattle. That's where it is. So yeah, I think Javonte Williams has really good upside, and I just want to believe. I managed to pick him up for basically free in 3 or 4 drafts, and he became someone who I was surprised I had so much stock of. And finally, finishing off the running backs here, Khalil Herbert, ADP 95, RB 37, 8th round value. He is not a sexy pick, but I think he's a really interesting and brave pick. They can run on this team, and I think with the RPO threat from Justin Fields, he should be the number 1 option. Well, maybe the number 2 option behind Justin Fields. I don't rate Devonta Parker? No, Devonta Foreman. Donta Foreman, sorry. So many names, so I always get them up. And Rashawn Johnson was great, but he was playing behind Bijan. I think he's a better switch up and back. He's been a consistent presence in that room with 3 other faces. He knows the system. He can score home runs. We've seen it in the preseason as well. He took a screen pass to the house as well. He can do really well with snaps as well. He got 32 points against Houston, only 60% of the snaps last year. And there are a lot of vacated snaps. David Montgomery was a 70% guy on the field. He was a decent RB2 with RB1 upside. I think Khalil Herbert could be just as good as that, if not better. I think that's why maybe they let David Montgomery go. I think he's a bit more athletically versatile than Montgomery was, and probably better in the passing game than we give him credit for. And we've seen that already in the preseason, although preseason can be a bit of a mirage. So there's your 5 RBs that I'd be looking at: Antonio Gibson, AJ Dillon, Zach Charbonnet, Javonte Williams, and Khalil Herbert. I think they've all got a lot of value to be had there, and you should be going after them. You should be, if you're stuck or you have to pivot, they're good guys to pivot to. Right, we're going to try and do a one take here, and we're going to jump straight into wide receivers. It's become very popular this year to go wide receiver early on in the first round. It's the new robust RB method, especially in PPR leagues, because most of them are in PPR leagues. But I guess, who are you turning to as your 3/4/5, maybe 6 in PPR leagues who can have upside? Because that's what you want. That's what wins league upside. And I'm going to start with a name who is a bit of a homer pick for me, but I'm going to start with a name from the Rams. It's Puka Nacua. You might not have heard of him. He was a 6th or 7th round pick this year, ADP 238. He's going wildly undrafted. Wide receiver 86. There's nothing historic to prove that Van Jefferson can be the number 2. I think he might be, but he's not a sweep guy. He's not a Robert Woods type architect. That is what Puka Nacua is. It is a very thin group, and Puka Nacua has got a lot of hype. He's tall, versatile, and he's already scoring in preseason. Again, maybe not the best guidance, but he was pretty handy at BYU. I think if they get experimental and they're behind in games, they had to pass a lot. I think Puka may be a volume play, and you get him for next to nothing. He's at worst a flex play if he's given the role that I think he's going to get. And he will be available on nearly all waiver wires, and that is what you want with your sleeper. He is 1 injury away from being the number 2 guy behind Cooper Kupp, who is going to attract a lot of attention. I think that number 2 role, whether it's Higbee, whether it's Van Jefferson, or whether it's Puka Nacua, week by week could have a lot of value there. And in the same reason, I think KJ Osborne is looking pretty good. ADP 164. He is not as sexy as Addison as a pick. But he's basically undrafted. Here's there's a wide receiver 66. You're gonna have Jay Jettas being doubled all the time, and Addison likely taking the number 2 slot, but maybe not in the first few weeks. I think the first few weeks could be Hawkinson really carving out a name for himself, and there are so many vacated targets. Adam Thielen was the 2nd most targeted player last year. He was rubbish because he didn't complete on many of those, and a lot of them were short. But there are targets there to be had. He's maybe being drafted a bit further down because of Hawkinson. I don't think Hawkinson's going to have as good a year as maybe he has in the past. But he's built his resume really well. He's as a boom player. He's had a 33-point game, 2 18-point performances in the last 4 weeks of the year as well. So he's coming off a bit of a high. He's trusted by Cousins to really go after it. And as I said, there's 107 vacated targets from Adam Thielen. Let's say Addison gets 70, 80 of them. I don't know. That takes KJ Osborne from an 85 to 95. Sorry, it takes KJ Osborne to 85 to 95 targets with 70 plus receptions, which I think is great. And especially with that bad a defense, they're going to have to be throwing it a lot more. So I think you might even see crazier numbers from Kirk Cousins and co. I'm going to pair two guys together now, and I would advise both of them because I think both of them have their reasons, and they're drafted right next to each other. And they are two guys over in Tampa. I had to remember where the Buccaneers played. And it's going to be obvious. It's going to be Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Now, their ADP reflects Chris Godwin's going maybe around ahead of the 5th and 6th. Mike Evans in the 7th. Yeah, but they are the wide receiver 30 and 31 according to the current ADP. I think Chris Godwin is the easy one to understand. Baker's probably going to throw short a lot. They're going to throw a lot. He works out the slot. It's exclusively him. I think he has shown the caliber to be a top 2 guy, and he's done that in the past. His historic performances, and that was with a subpar QB in Jameis. I forgot his name. Jameis, your famous Jameis. You know who I mean. Who threw 30 for 30, and we'll remember his name. That's going to absolutely econ me. Put it in the comments how stupid I am for not remembering his name. I prefer the floor of Godwin on this one, but I think Evans, on the face of it, could be more valuable because people think that Baker's going to throw short. Baker has historically not thrown short. He is thrown big, and Mike Evans does not score less than 1,000 yards. Even on bad years, he gets 1,001. He's still a wide receiver 2. He's not in that wide receiver 3 range. I think both of them have never failed to get into that wide receiver 2 range. He scored 50 in the final week last year, sorry. And people are sleeping on Mike, but as I said, Baker can throw it and he can get those big throws, and he's just been named the starter, so they're going to have a fair few more reps together in practice. And finally, we're going to go for another old head. And again, this is going to be one that kills me to recommend because I tried it myself last year. It didn't work out. Michael Thomas. ADP 104, 9th round. He's a wide receiver 42. My suggestion is that it takes a very special player to win the Triple Crown. There's been a massive dip. He's played 10 games since 2019, but he has a serviceable QB this year. I think a massive upgrade in QB in, I've forgotten his name, Derek Carr, who made Devontae Adams look really good last year. Devontae Adams was really good last year, but I think Michael Thomas has some of that same talent, even if he is just running slants or slants, however you want to say it. Olave is the perfect forward for him. He's going to get a lot of attention deep, while Michael Thomas gets to throw short, of which that's something that Derek Carr does a lot of. And I think this system is going to encourage that as well. When he does play, he's a wide receiver 1. Even if he's regressed, he's got a chance to be a top 24, not a wide receiver 4 as he's been drafted. So, yeah, those 4 guys who I think you can pick up later in your rounds. The earliest you're going to pick up someone who I still think is good to be a wide receiver 1 in a PPR league is Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Then you've got Michael Thomas is a bit of an old head in there. Still not old. I think he's like 28 or something like that. KJ Osborne, who's a bit of an unknown, but Puka Nacua. But you can pick up both those guys on the waiver wire, so just keep an eye out for them. And finally, I've got 3 guys on my tight end. You know what? I don't want to go with a rookie unless I have to, and there is no rookie that you can do that to me. Kyle Pitts was so hyped up, so hyped up. People draft him in like the 2nd round. He has not paid back on that one. You need to have a lot of talent, a lot of skill, and a lot of experience to play tight end. And as much as I take the piss out of tight ends and say it's rubbish for fantasy football, it's a really hard position to play, and I would not want to be playing it myself. So I'm going to play someone I'm going to pick someone here who's got a lot of experience and maybe guys who are due for a breakout. And so there's a bit of a mix here, but I'm just going to avoid rookies. I'm not going to go Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta. Opportunity is great. Michael Mayer, great. Opportunity, because Darren Waller's out. They're not going to perform as well as you think they are based on their draft capital. Tight ends take time to develop in the National Football League. But someone who has developed and has really shone at times is Mike Gesicki. ADP 176, tight end 22, 14th or 15th, or potentially undrafted. Even in a down year, last year, he was the tight end 20. There are a lot more passing opportunities in New England, as their system kind of dictates that they throw it short. I saw that a lot from Mac Jones, and he got very frustrated last year. And even people like Hunter Henry and Johnny Smith had game weeks where they were really quite good. He's still young, 27, so he's got a lot of gas in the tank if you're drafting him in other leagues. I've got him in my Dynasty League. Picked him up this year, so I thought exactly this. And he's flashed with back-to-back tight end one performances. He was 11, 7, and 12 in Miami before the change of regime, where last year he was a tight end 22, so he's definitely got it in him. He's a Darren Waller type who doesn't block, doesn't pass block really, and that's the difference. And it's interesting. Some of the top guys. I'd be interested to find the stats from Mike Gesicki here, but I was listening to another pod, and some of the top guys just don't pass block, and that's what turns him into effectively a wide receiver. Darren Waller last year pass blocked 5 times. Mark Andrews pass blocked once, and that's why they get good. And Mike Gesicki, he's not good at that. He's not that kind of guy. He's a Waller type guy who has the speed and will line up outside more. Hunter Henry taking more of that grunt work in the passing in a 12-man system in the jumbo packages. I think there's high opportunity, and with limited passing options, Bill Belichick's system can support a top tier tight end or 2 of them as well, and it has done in the past. There are many examples of great Patriots wide receiver type tight ends, and that's where I think you'll see him apply his trade. There's another couple of guys who I think are going undrafted, and this is maybe a bit of an anticlimax for the end of this episode, but Trey McBride, ADP 243, tight end 31. He's largely undrafted outside of Dynasty or Best Ball. Let's compare him against Zach Ertz. He's got high draft capital, had a reset, and they're having a reset there, and they want to make this work, and he's the future. Zach Ertz is potentially not. With Colt McCoy last year, he got an 80% snap share, and he had a 10 in week 10. He had an outing with 22 points. I think he was great in small doses, effectively. It's a different system. I think they're probably going to go less air raid and more two tight end sets, with those tight ends being Ertz and McBride, because I think they're 2 of the most talented players they have. But Zach Ertz has a lot of injury history, and Trey McBride doesn't. So he could be the tight end 1 in that system in the team, which I think it just gives him opportunity, especially now that Nuke Hopkins has gone as well. There's some vacated targets. Obviously, they're going to go a bit longer, but he's shown that he can be fantastic. And he was drafted in the 2nd round, so he had a decent amount of draft capital behind him. So I still believe in the Trey McBride experience. Finally, we're going to go back to the Tampa well, for a completely different reason. And what if you do believe that Baker has to throw it short because he can't see over his offensive line? Well, it's going to be K. Dotton, isn't it? ADP 258, tight end 36. He's undrafted. Who else is it going to be? O'Keefe? No, they don't have anyone else. Gronk's not coming back. So Baker does have a tendency to target tight ends, and we've seen good tight end performances with him in the system. It's a rebuilding year, so you definitely see more targets. They're going to be running from behind. You're going to get a regression from Baker naturally. He's not going to throw it as deep as often. He's going to have those spike plays, and that's where you're going to see Mike Evans. But he is a safe pair of hands, and that's I think what you want to see here. Baker is a safe pair of hands, and Otton is as well. He should see an uptick in targets, and he doesn't drop the ball a huge amount. And even as a rookie, and when I say don't draft rookies in this, not QB 26, tight end 26. So he definitely has a lot of upside there available to him. He's got a lot of raw talent. So I think opportunity there maybe it wins out for K. Dotton. So let's take a look through who we had from the start at QB, and these guys who are not the elites, but they're the experienced old heads. Rodgers, Geno, and Tannehill, I think, are going to flash up really well for you. If you're going 0 RB, who do you go with as a reliable RB1, RB2? I think there's many reliable RB1s there, but if you want volume plays and week-on-week ability, I think Antonio Gibson, Javonte Williams, and Khalil Herbert can give you that, and a bit of stability. AJ Dillon and potentially Zach Charbonnet are going to be good options as well. Wide receiver, I think you're just looking at the potential upside in any given week. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans provide that in spades. Michael Thomas has the talent. KJ Osborne, I think, is trying to carve out something for himself, and where Addison might be trying to, this situation, I think it could be great. And likewise, Puka Nacua, I think, is going to be a really dark horse and probably my sleeper pick of all these guys. Finally, at tight end, don't go with rookies. Go for guys who are going to break out in their second year. Trey McBride and K. Dotton are going to do that. I think Mike Gesicki has something to prove. He's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. And that's a lot, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. If you've got this far, if you're watching, give us a like, thumbs up, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It's been really encouraging over the last couple of weeks, me putting out content on a more consistent basis. I did a lot of content and you guys responded and listened to it all. So really grateful. We are going into the season on a really big high. We're hoping to break some milestones, which I'll put on socials very soon. You can follow it all at Rugby with Pads. I am slowly building a store for you guys to buy some merch, and I'm going to be launching some new merch for the season as well. And any suggestions that you guys want to see, and we're going to do some personalized well, so watch this space. But for now, you can support the pod in any way. Your memberships and merch are available at rugbywithpads.com. It's all at Rugby with Pads. It's like we've got good branding or something. I didn't think about that ahead of time when I started this. But if you guys like this, please share it, please like it, please subscribe, please comment, 5 stars, whatever you can do to support the pod. Really appreciate it. We'll be back very soon with some season previews. We'll do a bit of around the league as well. We've got some stuff coming up, but it's just going to be a bit more sporadic until we get back into the regular season things, and then we're getting back into a schedule. I'll announce what the schedule is going to look like a bit close to the season. Thank you so much for listening once more. I'm rabbiting on, and I will see you all on the virtual gridiron.